life. We talked about that. And this week I want us to look at how we deepen the relationships that matter most. Maybe this is a more timely Valentine's message. I don't know. But we're going to look at that. And so our theme verse for this week is Psalms chapter 90, verse 12. And it says, "Teach us to make the most of our time so that we may grow in wisdom." So God, teach us to make the most of our time so that we can have the wisdom to pursue what it is that matters most. So last week I gave you a little bit of homework, only I kind of rephrased the term into life work. You'll remember that. And so I said that I needed for you to determine your 1 month values. You remember that? Remember how I asked you to define that by making a list and then making a shorter list? How many of you did that? By a show of hands. You know, honesty can be cruel sometimes, can't it? Well, let me rephrase the question. How about this? How many of you thought it was a great idea last week, but you just haven't gotten around to it, and it's still on your to-do list? By a show of hands. Woohoo! All right. That's great. Thank you so much. So at the end of last week's message, I kind of summarized it into one phrase. And that was, to live like I'm dying. And that's what we were going after. And so here's the deal. If you woke up every single day and you're going to live that day like you're dying, you would be more intentional not only with what you did, but who you did it with. And that's what I'm going to go after today. So John chapter 8, verse 3 is a passage that we're going to study today. And we're going to look at this. And maybe you're familiar with this particular event. My prayer is that you'll be able to look at this event and see it maybe with some fresh eyes, some new context, and be able to take something away from today's teaching. And so, verse 3, Jesus was speaking, and it says, "As he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman that they had caught in the act of adultery. And they put her in front of the crowd." Now, the teachers, for those of you who may not know, in the big picture of things, they were the teachers of religious law. They were kind of like the spiritual police. They were the enforcers of that law. And so, but in this particular picture, they are not so much interested about enforcing the law as they are about trapping Jesus. That's what is going on here underneath this word picture. And so they're trying to trap Jesus. And I find it interesting that in this particular setting, they bring the woman in front of Jesus, in front of the crowd. That's what they said. They only brought the woman. And I'm curious, what happened to the guy? Where was he at? I mean, did he hear the accuser's camels pull up outside and then jump out the back real quick? Or what happened? Or maybe he was just, you know, in some other place reading the newspaper, checking out the major gladiator league scores. I don't know. It doesn't say. But I don't think that it matters that he wasn't there on the scene. Because in truth, this scene wasn't about him, and it wasn't really even about the woman. It was all about getting Jesus. So you'll see that here in verse 4, and it goes on. "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in the very act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" They were trying to trap him into saying something that they could use against him. So the trap here is that they're trying to force Jesus into one of two answers. Either way that he answers, they're going to pounce on him. They're going to get him. If he says, "No, don't stone her," what he would be doing is he'd be going against the laws that Moses gave. And anybody listening would go, well, he's not from God because he's teaching against the laws that Moses gave us. And that would be a loss. And yet if he said, "You know what, go ahead, stone her," then that would be a loss. Because long story short, they couldn't actually stone anybody within a Roman jurisdiction. And so that would be against Roman law. And so either way, it was a lose-lose situation that Jesus was faced with here. And not only that, but Jesus had a credibility that he had built up at that time of being a person of compassion and a person of forgiveness. And his reputation in that would be quite damaged if he said to go stone her. So these accusers, I've got to kind of imagine that they're very prideful and that they're thinking, "Oh yeah, we've got him. High five. Yeah. Woohoo! Jesus is trapped. One of two answers. No way out. He's trapped. We've got him." And the rest of verse 6 goes like this. "Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. So he breaks this whole momentum. He breaks it, and you can almost see him writing in the dust with his finger. Now, if you've ever heard anything on this passage that said what he was writing at that time, it's manufactured. Because we don't know what it is that he wrote. It's not ever said in the scriptures anywhere what it was that he was writing. For all we know, he might have been writing the 10 Commandments because they were originally written by the finger of God. Or he might have been writing the names of the people in that crowd that had committed the very act of adultery. We just don't know. Or he could have been writing, Pharisees are dumb. You know? Or Jesus was here. Have a great summer.